Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she moved deeper into the bandits' stronghold. The stone walls around her felt cold and oppressive, their weight pressing down on her. Her breath was shallow, and her small feet barely made a sound against the hard, worn floor. Every step she took seemed to echo in the silence, as if the very fortress was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The dim light from the torches on the walls flickered and danced, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Lyra's mind raced. She had never imagined she would be in a place like this, creeping through a bandit's lair, looking for something so precious to her. The toy the small wooden dragon her father had carved was all she had left of him. She couldn't let these thieves keep it. She couldn't let them steal any more from her. As she crept through the hallway, the sounds of the bandits' voices reached her ears. Their laughter and shouting echoed from behind a heavy wooden door. Lyra paused, her heart skipping a beat. She knew that this was where they were keeping the treasure, the dragon toy. But how would she get it back? She looked around and saw a small window at the end of the corridor. The shadows in the room beyond were too dark for her to make out any details. But she could hear the familiar sound of footsteps coming closer. If she didn't act soon, she might be caught. Lyra ducked into a small alcove, holding her breath as the footsteps grew louder. She pressed herself against the wall, hoping the shadows would conceal her. She could feel the cold stone beneath her hand, but it was a comfort, something solid to hold on to while she tried to calm her racing thoughts. The footsteps stopped right outside the alcove. Lyra dared not move, her heart hammering in her chest. She had to stay hidden. She had to be quiet. The door to the room opened with a creak, and Lyra could hear the sound of voices and laughter growing louder as the bandits came inside. But before they could turn toward her hiding place, she noticed something strange. The leader of the bandits, the man who had stolen her toy, was holding something. It was a small, carved dragon. Her dragon. Her breath caught in her throat. The bandit leader walked into the room, his coarse laughter echoing through the hall. "This little thing is what the girl was crying over?" he mocked, holding the wooden toy up in the air for everyone to see. "I thought it would be something worth taking, but it's just a silly child's plaything." Lyra's heart ached. It was her father's gift, the one thing that had been left behind after he had passed away, the one thing that had kept her connected to him. And now, it was in the hands of a cruel thief. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had to act. With a quiet breath, she stepped out of the alcove, keeping to the shadows. Her eyes were fixed on the dragon toy in the bandit leader's hands. Her fingers tingled as she crept closer, making sure not to make a sound. But just as she was about to reach out and grab the toy, a voice called out from behind her. "What do you think you're doing, girl?" The bandit leader said, his voice low and dangerous. Lyra froze, her hand inches away from the toy. Her heart skipped a beat, and she turned slowly to face him. The bandit leader stood there, his cold eyes fixed on her with a sneer. He had seen her. Her pulse raced. She had been caught. She had failed. But then something happened. The bandit leader's smirk faded slightly as he looked into her eyes. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of something Lyra couldn't quite place. It was almost as if he recognized her, as if he knew who she was. But then it was gone, replaced by a hard, cruel expression. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," the bandit leader said, his voice sharp. "But you shouldn't have come here, girl. You think you can just walk in and take what's mine." Lyra stood tall, her heart still pounding, but her voice steady. "That's not yours. It never was. It's mine, and I'm taking it back." The bandit leader laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the stone walls. "You're brave, but you're foolish. Do you think you can take anything from me?" Before Lyra could respond, he lunged forward, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her roughly toward the center of the room. The other bandits watched in silence, their eyes filled with amusement. Lyra struggled, but his grip was like iron. She wasn't strong enough to break free, but she refused to let fear take over. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to back down now. "You're going to regret this," the bandit leader said, his voice cold as he held the toy out of her reach. "This was never yours to begin with. It was taken from someone else, just like you're trying to take it back." Lyra's mind raced. But before she could think of what to do next, she heard a sound from behind her, a deep, rumbling growl. The ground beneath them trembled, and suddenly the room was filled with a burst of wind. The torches on the walls flickered, casting long, twisting shadows. Release her, a voice thundered. Lyra turned to see Rigger, the dragon, standing in the doorway. His wings were spread wide, his eyes glowing like molten gold. His massive body filled the entrance, blocking out the light. The bandits froze in shock. "You?" the bandit leader shouted, his voice trembling with fear. "You're that dragon, the one from the forest?" Rigger's eyes narrowed. "I am no mere dragon," he said, his voice deep and powerful. "I am the one who protects the innocent. And you, thief, will not harm this girl or her family." The bandits scrambled back in fear. But the bandit leader held his ground, glaring at Rigger. "You think you can just waltz in here and take back what's mine?" He spat. "This is my stronghold. You have no power here." Rigger's gaze hardened, his wings shifting with a faint hiss. "You have no idea what power is," he said softly, his voice filled with a quiet fury. "But you will." With a single, swift motion, Rigger stepped forward, his massive tail sweeping through the room, knocking over crates and sending bandits stumbling to the ground. The bandit leader's grip on Lyra loosened, and she broke free, her heart still racing in her chest. The bandits fled the room, shouting in fear as they ran for the door. Rigger didn't chase them. He merely watched them go, his golden eyes cold and unblinking. Lyra stood there for a moment, still shaken by what had just happened. But as she looked at the wooden dragon in the bandit leader's hand, she felt a surge of hope. She could feel her father's presence in it, even though it had been taken from her. And now, it was back where it belonged. Rigger stepped forward, lowering his head to Lyra's level. "It is time to reclaim what is yours," he said, his voice gentle. Lyra took the toy from the bandit leader's hands, holding it tightly in her own. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. Rigger nodded. "There is still much to be done. The world is changing, and the bond between us must be rebuilt." Lyra looked at the wooden dragon in her hands, feeling its weight, its power. She knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would shape her future and the future of the world. Cliffhanger. As they turned to leave the stronghold, Lyra heard a sound, an ominous rumble from the distance. The air seemed to shift, and the ground trembled once again. Something dark was stirring, something more dangerous than the bandits. What was coming next? Would they be ready? The morning sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting its soft golden light across the landscape. The forest surrounding the bandits' stronghold was quiet now, its usual sounds of wildlife returning to life after the chaos of the night. Lyra stood outside the crumbling stone walls of the fortress, holding the small wooden dragon close to her chest. The weight of it felt different now, heavier, as if it carried more than just memories of her father. She had reclaimed it. Her father's last gift, the one thing she thought she had lost forever, was now in her hands again. But it was more than just a toy. It was a symbol of hope, of change, and of a new beginning. Rigger stood beside her, his large form towering over the small girl. His wings were folded against his back, and his golden eyes watched the horizon with a quiet intensity. He had been with her through everything, guiding her, protecting her. His presence was both a comfort and a reminder that their journey was far from over. "You've done well, Lyra," Rigger said, his voice deep and steady. "You have shown great courage." Lyra smiled softly but didn't answer. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions, relief, sadness, and hope. She had faced the bandits and reclaimed the toy, but there was still so much more to do. The world was changing, and with it, the role of the dragons and the humans who had long forgotten them. Rigger turned to face her, his golden eyes filled with wisdom. "The bandits are gone, but their actions are not without consequence. The world you knew is fading. The kingdom, your people, they are all part of something much larger than you may understand right now." Lyra looked up at him, her heart heavy with questions. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. "The dragons have been silent for many years," Rigger explained. "But we did not disappear because we chose to. The bond between dragons and humans was broken, but it can be rebuilt. It must be. Your father's people once called on us for protection, and we answered. But now, the world is changing. The old ways are fading, and something much darker is stirring. Lyra felt a chill at his words. Darker, she whispered. Rigger nodded. The bandits were only the beginning. They are part of a much larger force, one that seeks to control what remains of the old world. Their leader was no ordinary man. He was a pawn. But there are greater powers at play, forces that even the dragons must prepare for. Lyra shivered. She had never imagined that the problems of her small village could be connected to something so big, something so dangerous. The world she had known, the world of peace and quiet, was gone. But now, standing beside the dragon, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. I don't understand, Lyra said softly. What can we do? I'm just a girl. What can I do to stop something like that? Rigger looked down at her, his eyes softening with something like compassion. You are more than just a girl, Lyra. You are the key. The toy you hold, the gift from your father, is not just a symbol of your past. It is the key to the future. Lyra frowned. What do you mean? It's just a wooden toy. Rigger shook his head. It is not just a toy. It is a relic of the old bond, the bond between dragons and humans. The dragons gave their magic to those who held it. Your father, your people, were once protectors of the land, and the magic of the dragons flowed through them. That power still exists, but it is dormant, waiting to be awakened. Lyra's eyes widened. She had always thought of her father as a kind, gentle man, a craftsman who had made beautiful things with his hands. She had never imagined he was a protector, someone who carried the power of dragons within him. But now, it seemed like the pieces of a much larger story were falling into place. But how do I awaken this power? Lyra asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. How do I make it work? You will know when the time comes, Rigger said. The magic is within you, Lyra. You must trust yourself and trust the bond that is awakening. But remember, you are not alone. The dragons will be with you. We will guide you. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination. She didn't know how she was supposed to awaken the power of the dragons. But she knew one thing, she couldn't do it alone. She would need the help of Rigger and the other dragons. And she would need to find a way to unite her people. The world was changing, and the future was uncertain. But she couldn't sit by and do nothing. Not after everything that had happened. We need to go back to the village, Lyra said, her voice firm. I need to tell my mother. She has to know about the dragons. She has to understand what's coming. Rigger nodded. You are wise, Lyra. The people must be prepared. But know this, the road ahead will not be easy. There are forces that will not welcome the return of the dragons. There are those who fear the power that once was. Lyra's heart sank. She had never thought about that before. There would be people who wouldn't understand, people who would resist. But she couldn't let that stop her. She had to try. The journey back to Ravenville was long, and Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was following them. The air felt heavier, and the ground seemed to vibrate beneath their feet. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the storm that was about to come. When they finally reached the village, the sun had set, and the village was quiet, its few lights flickering in the dark. Lyra ran to her mother's cottage, her heart racing. She had to explain everything: the dragons, the danger, the power she was supposed to awaken. She had to make her mother understand. As she reached the door, she hesitated. Her mother had always been strong, but this was different. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Lyra knocked on the door, and a moment later, her mother appeared, her face filled with worry. Lyra? Mara asked, her voice shaking. Where have you been? I was so worried. Lyra smiled softly, but the worry in her heart remained. Mama, there's so much I need to tell you. Inside, Mara sat down with Lyra, and Rigger stood silently by the door, his presence filling the room. Lyra explained everything about the bandits, the toy, the dragon, and the magic that was awakening. She told her mother about the future, about the danger that was coming, and about the role she was meant to play in all of it. Mara listened in silence, her face pale as she absorbed the words. When Lyra finished, her mother didn't speak at first. She just sat there, her hands clenched together in her lap. Finally, Mara spoke, her voice trembling. I never imagined anything like this. I always knew there was more to this world. But this? Lyra took her mother's hand. I know it's hard to believe, but I can feel it, Mama. The dragons are real, and they need us. We can't turn away from this. Mara nodded slowly. I believe you, Lyra. You've always been strong, even when I wasn't sure. If you say this is true, then I will stand with you. We will face this together. Lyra smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Her mother believed in her, and with Rigger's guidance, they could face whatever was to come. But even as she felt the warmth of her mother's support, a dark thought crossed her mind. The darkness Rigger had warned about was still out there, and it was only a matter of time before it found them. As the night deepened, the wind picked up outside, rustling the leaves of the trees. Lyra stood by the window, looking out into the dark forest beyond. She knew that the journey was far from over. There was a larger battle ahead, one that would test her courage and strength. But she was ready. She had to be. The dawn of a new kingdom was coming, and it would be shaped by the courage of a young girl and the ancient power of dragons. Cliffhanger, as Lyra gazed out into the dark. A shadow passed by in the distance, a figure cloaked in black, moving silently through the trees. Was it a sign of the darkness Rigger had warned about? Or was it something else, something more dangerous than they had imagined? The sun had barely risen when Lyra and Rigger set out on their journey. The air was still cool, and the quiet morning was filled with the soft sounds of nature waking up. Birds chirped from the trees, and the scent of fresh dew lingered in the air. But beneath the peaceful morning, there was an undercurrent of tension. The world felt different now. Lyra's heart raced as she walked beside the mighty dragon, Rigger. She had never imagined she would be doing something like this, walking with a dragon, heading toward danger. But here she was, and there was no turning back. The bandits had taken her father's gift, the wooden dragon that had been the last piece of her father's love. It wasn't just a toy, it was a key to something bigger, something that connected her to a forgotten promise, a promise made long ago between the dragons and the people of her land. Rigger walked beside her, his massive form casting a long shadow across the ground. His wings, though folded against his body, were still large enough to block out the sun when he spread them. His scales shimmered like dark glass, and his eyes glowed faintly in the morning light. There was a calm strength in him, but there was also something ancient and knowing in his gaze. He was not just a creature of fire and power, he was a guardian, a protector, and perhaps something more. Are you ready, Lyra? Rigger's deep voice broke the silence, his words carrying a weight that made Lyra feel both comforted and uncertain. She nodded, though her stomach twisted with nerves. I think so. I have to be. Rigger's golden eyes softened. You have more courage than you know. But remember, the path ahead will not be easy. The bandits are dangerous, and the stronghold where they are hiding is well guarded. Lyra's mind wandered back to the night the bandits had attacked. She had seen the cruelty in their eyes, heard the anger in their voices. They had taken her toy, her father's last gift, and left her mother bleeding and hurt. The anger still burned inside her. She wanted to get her toy back, but more than that, she wanted to stop the bandits from hurting anyone else. The journey to the bandits' stronghold was long. The path led them through dense forests and across wide rivers. The days were quiet, but the nights were filled with unease. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Every rustle in the trees, every distant howl made her jump. But Rigger remained calm, guiding them with his steady presence. As they walked, Lyra asked more questions about the dragons. She wanted to understand them better, to know why they had come back after all these years. Why did the dragons leave? She asked one evening as they camped by a small stream. Rigger gazed into the fire, the glow reflecting in his eyes. Many generations ago, we stood beside the people of this land. We fought together, shared knowledge, and protected each other. But over time, the people forgot. The bond between humans and dragons faded. Your kind no longer called upon us, and we grew distant. Lyra's brow furrowed. But why now? Why are you helping us now? Rigger looked down at her, his eyes filled with an ancient sadness. The bond is still there, even if it has been forgotten. And when you cried out, Lyra, when you called for help, the magic of the bond awakened once more. It was not by chance that I heard your call. It was fate. Lyra didn't fully understand what he meant, but she could feel the weight of his words. She had called out in her grief, in her fear, and Rigger had heard her. He had come to help. Not just her, but the world that had forgotten the dragon's promise. As the days passed, Lyra grew closer to Rigger. She learned more about the world through his eyes, the way dragons saw time, the way they felt the pulse of the earth beneath their feet. She even began to feel a strange sense of peace when she was near him, as though the fear and uncertainty that had plagued her since the bandits' attack had slowly begun to fade. But that peace was always fragile. Every night, as they made camp, Lyra could hear the whispers of the forest, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of unseen creatures. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would come when they reached the stronghold. One evening, as they neared the bandits' stronghold, the air grew heavy with tension. The forest around them had fallen silent, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as they approached the edge of a clearing. Beyond it, hidden in the shadows of a jagged mountain, was the stronghold, a dark fortress made of stone and wood, surrounded by a high wall. "This is it," Rigger said softly, his voice low. "We must be careful. The bandits will be watching. They know the value of what they have taken." Lyra swallowed hard. The stronghold looked even more menacing in the dim light of evening. It was surrounded by high cliffs, and the only way in was through the main gate, which was guarded by watchful eyes. "How will we get inside?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Rigger stood tall, his wings rustling slightly. "I will not be able to enter the stronghold unnoticed. But you, Lyra, are small and quick. I will create a distraction to draw their attention. You will slip inside and find your toy." Lyra's stomach twisted. The thought of going into that dark place alone, without Rigger's protection, filled her with fear. But she knew there was no other choice. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm despite the fear in her chest. "I have to." Rigger gave her a long, searching look. "You are stronger than you realize," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "But be careful. The bandits are not just thieves. They are ruthless, and they will not hesitate to harm you if they catch you." Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure she was ready for this, but she knew it was the only way. She had to reclaim what was taken from her and stop the bandits from causing any more harm. The night was dark, and the stars above were hidden behind a veil of clouds. Lyra and Rigger approached the stronghold, moving slowly and carefully as they neared the gates. Rigger stopped now, he whispered, his voice barely audible. With a deep breath, Rigger spread his wings wide and let out a mighty roar that shook the ground beneath them. The sound was deafening, echoing across the forest and up the cliffs. The bandits guarding the gate would certainly hear it. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She watched as the guards rushed to the walls, shouting in panic. Now was her chance. With a final look at Rigger, who stood tall and strong in the shadows, Lyra darted toward the stronghold, her small feet barely making a sound on the ground. She moved swiftly, her heart racing in her chest. As she slipped into the fortress through a gap in the wall, inside, the air was thick with the smell of wood and sweat. The stronghold was quiet, but she knew that wouldn't last for long. She had to move fast. Cliffhanger, as Lyra crept deeper into the stronghold, she heard a voice, a familiar voice, one that she thought she'd never hear again. "What are you doing here, girl?" It was the leader of the bandits, standing in the shadows ahead. Lyra froze, her breath caught in her throat. Had he seen her? Would her mission end before it even began? The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light over the village of Ravenville. The air was cool, and the night was peaceful, but inside Mara's small cottage, there was no peace to be found. Lyra sat by her mother's side, holding a cloth to Mara's wounded arm. The cut was deep, and Mara's face was pale, but she was alive, and for that, Lyra was thankful. She hadn't spoken much since the bandits had left. Her mind was filled with questions, confusion, and fear. What had happened? Who had that dragon been? Why had it come? And why had it protected them? The image of the dragon, large and powerful, kept flashing in her mind. It had been like something out of a storybook, a creature of legend. Its wings sweeping across the sky with such strength that the earth had trembled beneath them. And then, its voice deep, ancient, and filled with power. You called. Lyra's heart still raced whenever she thought about it. She had never believed in dragons. They were stories, things her father had once told her about before he had passed. And yet, now, here was one, real and standing before her. She couldn't understand it. How could something so incredible just appear out of nowhere? Mara shifted slightly in her bed, breaking Lyra's thoughts. She looked up and saw her mother's tired face. Mara was awake now, though still weak. She smiled gently at Lyra, her voice soft. "You're still awake, sweet one." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with worry. "Mama, what happened? Was that dragon real? Why did it help us? And why were those men so afraid of it?" Mara took a deep breath and gently pulled her daughter closer. She held her hand, her fingers warm against Lyra's cold skin. "It was real, Lyra. The dragon was real. But there's more to it than just that." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean? What is going on, Mama?" Mara hesitated. She didn't want to tell Lyra too much, not yet. The world had always seemed so simple to her daughter, full of love, safety, and the comfort of their small village. But the truth was more complicated than that. And now, it seemed as if things were changing. The peaceful life they had known was crumbling around them. "I think," Mara began slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I think there are things in this world that are bigger than we understand. Things that go beyond just us." Lyra didn't fully understand what her mother meant, but she felt a strange heaviness in the air. Something was happening, something bigger than anything she had ever imagined. The dragon had come, and it was only the beginning. Suddenly, a noise from outside caught their attention, a soft rumbling, like distant thunder. Lyra stood up quickly, looking out the window, her heart racing. It wasn't the wind. It was something else. Something powerful. Mara also looked uneasy, her eyes scanning the night outside. "We need to be careful," she whispered. "There's something in the air, something that's not right." Before either of them could speak again, there was a loud thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of massive wings. The ground seemed to shake with every beat of the dragon's wings as it landed outside the cottage. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know if she was ready to face the creature again, but she knew they couldn't hide forever. With a sense of both fear and wonder, Lyra opened the door, peering out into the night. There, standing in the moonlight, was the dragon rigger. He was as majestic as Lyra remembered, his wings folded against his back and his eyes glowing with an ancient light. This time, the dragon did not roar or cause a storm. Instead, he stood still, watching them with quiet intensity. His golden eyes seemed to study Lyra as though he could see into her very soul. Lyra stepped outside cautiously, her breath catching in her throat. Are you here to help us again?" she asked, her voice small. Rigger's great head tilted slightly to one side. "I am here because of a promise," he said, his voice like a deep rumble of thunder. "A promise that has been forgotten for many generations. A promise made to your people long ago." Lyra's eyes widened. "A promise? What kind of promise?" Rigger's wings shifted slightly, and he took a step closer. "Your people once called upon the dragons in times of great need, and we answered. But over time, the call faded, and your people forgot. We faded from the world, hidden in the mountains, watching as your kind struggled." Mara stepped forward, still holding her arm, but determined to hear the truth. "What do you mean by a promise? And why are you here now?" Rigger lowered his head, his golden eyes never leaving theirs. "The time has come for us to rise again. There is much that is broken in this world. The promise was not just to protect, but to guide, to help restore what was lost." Lyra didn't understand everything the dragon was saying, but she could feel the power in his words. There was something ancient and wise about him, something that made her believe he wasn't lying. "But why me?" she asked. "Why did you come to us? We're just a small family. There are other people in the world who need your help, Rigger's gaze softened, and he took a slow breath. "You call me, child," he said. "Your heart, pure and full of love, reached out in a moment of need. And I answered. But there is more. The toy you carried, the one you lost, it is not just a simple trinket. It is the key to something much greater." Lyra looked down at her hands, remembering the wooden dragon that the bandits had stolen. "My toy, but it's just a wooden dragon. My father carved it for me before he died." Rigger's eyes glowed brighter, and his voice became even more serious. "That toy was no ordinary gift. It is a symbol of an ancient bond between your people and the dragons. A bond that has been broken over time, but which is now awakening." Lyra's mind raced, trying to understand. But if the toy is important, then what do we do now? How do we get it back? The dragon looked down at her, and for a moment, there was a deep silence between them. "The toy is in the hands of those who took it from you. They will not give it up easily, but I can guide you to them. We will reclaim it, together." Mara shook her head. "You can't go alone, Lyra," she said softly, her voice filled with concern. "The bandits are dangerous. I can't let you face them alone." But Lyra, filled with both fear and determination, shook her head. "I can't let them keep it. My father's gift, it's the last piece of him that I have left." Rigger's gaze softened, and he knelt down to Lyra's level. "You are brave, young one. The strength you have is greater than you know. We will face this together." Mara looked at the dragon, then at her daughter, and finally nodded. "If you must go, then go with my blessing. But take care, Lyra." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling a surge of hope and fear all at once. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone. Rigger's wings rustled as he spread them wide. "We will leave at dawn. The bandits' stronghold lies to the north. Prepare yourself," as the dragon took to the sky, disappearing into the night. Lyra felt something deep within her stir. This was just the beginning of something much larger than she had ever imagined. And no matter what came next, she was ready to face it. Cliffhanger, the wind howled as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon. Lyra stood beside her mother, watching the sky where the dragon had vanished. What dangers awaited them at the bandits' stronghold? And would they be able to reclaim what had been taken from them? The sun was beginning to set over the peaceful village of Ravenville, casting a warm golden light across the fields and homes. In one small cottage at the edge of the village, a young girl named Lyra played in the garden with her mother, Mara. The air smelled of fresh flowers, and the earth was soft beneath their feet. Lyra giggled as she chased after a butterfly, her small feet barely touching the ground as she ran with all the energy of a child full of life. In wonder, Mara smiled softly, watching her daughter play. The bond between them was strong, built from years of love and care. Mara's heart swelled with pride as she looked at Lyra, her bright eyes shining with curiosity and joy. The two of them had always been close, ever since Lyra's father had passed away when she was just a baby. Mara had done her best to raise Lyra with love and kindness. And although life had not always been easy, they had always had each other. Lyra's most precious possession was a small wooden dragon that her father had carved for her before he died. The dragon, though simple in design, had been her constant companion. She would carry it everywhere, holding it tightly in her hands as if it were a piece of her father's spirit, still with her even though he was gone. It had become more than just a toy. It was a symbol of the love she had lost, but still carried in her heart. On this particular afternoon, Mara was working in the garden, pulling weeds from the soil and humming a soft tune. Lyra sat nearby, her legs crossed in the grass, playing with her wooden dragon. She gently ran her fingers over its smooth surface, imagining it came to life, soaring through the skies and protecting her from harm. Her eyes sparkled with dreams of adventure, even though her world was small and safe. But that peace was about to be shattered as the evening grew darker. A shadow moved across the fields. It was nothing more than a flicker at first, barely noticeable. But soon, the sound of horses' hooves grew louder, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of approaching riders. Mara stood up quickly, sensing the danger. She knew these riders. They were bandits, men who had once roamed the outskirts of the kingdom. causing trouble wherever they went. Mara's heart skipped a beat. She looked around, searching for a way to protect her daughter, but it was too late. The bandits had already arrived. The leader of the bandits, a tall, rough man with a scar across his face, rode forward. His eyes were cold, and his voice was harsh. "Out of the way, woman," he sneered, waving his sword in the air. "We're not here for you. We're here for something far more valuable." Mara stepped forward, standing between the bandits and her daughter. "Leave us be," she said, her voice steady but trembling. "We have nothing of value. Please, just go." But the bandits were not interested in what they had to say. The leader's eyes narrowed as he noticed the small wooden dragon in Lyra's hands. "What's this?" he grunted, reaching down to snatch the toy from the girl's grasp. Lyra looked up, her wide eyes filled with fear. "No, that's my toy," she cried, clutching the dragon tightly to her chest. "Please don't take it." But the bandit ignored her cries, pulling the dragon from her hands. "Worthless thing," he muttered, throwing the toy aside. He turned to Mara and sneered. "We didn't come here for toys. We came here for something you have. A treasure." Mara's face paled. "I don't have anything of value," she said, her voice shaking. "Please, leave us alone. We have nothing for you." The leader's expression twisted with anger. "Then we'll take what we want by force," he growled. With a swift motion, he drew his sword and swung it toward Mara. She barely had time to react before the blade sliced across her arm, leaving a deep, painful gash. Lyra screamed as her mother fell to the ground, clutching her bleeding arm. The bandits laughed, their cruel voices echoing through the air. "Now we'll take everything," the leader said, his eyes filled with greed. "The treasure is ours." But before they could do anything more, a faint rumble echoed through the ground, like the sound of distant thunder. The bandits paused, confused. What was that noise? It was as if the earth itself was warning them. Lyra, still sitting on the ground, her hands clutching her mother's bloodied arm, looked up into the sky. She had no idea what was happening, but she could feel something strange and powerful stirring deep within her, like a force she could not understand. It was as if the very land was responding to her pain. "Help," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling with fear and sadness. "Someone, please help us." She didn't know who she was asking. She didn't know where the words were coming from. But in that moment, the world around her seemed to shift. The wind began to blow stronger, the trees swayed, and the ground beneath her feet trembled even more. The bandits looked around, growing nervous. "What's going on?" one of them asked, his voice uncertain. The leader scowled. "Enough of this. Take the woman and the girl. We're leaving." But before they could act, the ground shook violently. The sound of heavy wings filled the air, and the sky seemed to darken. Lyra looked up once more, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. What was happening? From behind the trees, something enormous appeared. It was like a shadow, vast and dark, blocking out the sky. The bandits gasped in terror, their faces draining of color. The creature that emerged was no man, but a beast, one with wings as wide as the sky and scales that shimmered like the night. It was a dragon. The dragon landed with a mighty thud, sending a gust of wind through the trees. Its eyes, glowing like molten gold, fixed on the bandits. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the dragon and the soft cries of Lyra. "Leave them." The dragon's voice rumbled, deep and ancient, echoing through the forest. It was not a plea, it was a command. The bandits, still frozen in fear, hesitated. But the leader, trying to maintain control, raised his sword. "Get back! We'll fight!" he shouted, though his voice shook with fear. But the dragon did not respond with violence. Instead, it opened its mouth and let out a powerful roar, so loud that it seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. The sound was deafening, and the bandits dropped their weapons, falling to their knees in fear. Lyra's heart raced as she looked at the dragon. It was as if the world had shifted in an instant, and she was no longer just a frightened child, but part of something much greater. The dragon turned its head toward her, its glowing eyes softening for a moment. "You called," it said, its voice gentle, yet filled with power. "We have heard your cry." And with that, The bandits were gone, fleeing into the forest, leaving Mara and Lyra behind. The dragon lowered its head, and with a single, powerful beat of its wings, it disappeared into the sky. Lyra stared after it, her heart still pounding in her chest. What had just happened? Who was that? Was it real? And more importantly, had the dragon come for them? Cliffhanger, as Lyra looked at her mother, still lying on the ground. She realized that something had changed. Something had awakened. And the journey she never expected was only just beginning.